noticed on from the introduction to jQuery, there's a couple of other examples that were given in the presentation from Murrock. Was the image rollover and the accordion. So you've got some resources there to play around with. They're not complete, but there's some of the images and that kind of stuff are there if you wish to work on them. So what I'd like to do now is to move on to what we call Ajax. Okay, so there's a Ajax example there that's given, and then we'll have an activity. Actually, what I'll just do here is if you click on that, you can download it and get it up and running, but essentially it will bring you to something like this. Okay, so this is the just something that I've put up here for a few years ago, and it's just the actual code. The code itself is available. The only change I've made to it at the moment is I've changed the Ajax, jQuery that I'm using to be the current version, 3.5.1. I'm using a CDN connection to that. Okay, apart from that, the code is the same. So we'll just have a look at here. I've tried to give some discussion on what's actually going in here. Okay. One of the issues we face, and the reason why we're going to use this thing called Ajax, which is asynchronous communication between the client and the server. We normally have what we call synchronous communication. So the what actually happens on that is that the client will send a request, the server will get that request, and it'll send a full response back to the client, which results in a new page being displayed by the client. Okay, so we're very familiar with that synchronous approach. However, there's sometimes when we might want to, if you like, we have most of our content on the page displayed, but we might just want to make some kind of a change or do something slightly different. We don't want to have to reload the complete page again. Okay, so what we want to would be nice to be able to do is if we could click a button somehow and we could just change part of the displayed page. So we want to do that using the HTTP kind of protocols as well. So this was a need that has been satisfied with a product, Ajax. Okay, so essentially what happens with Ajax is that a request is sent to the server. The server will process that request. It will then send a reply, but rather than the reply being a complete new page, a full, if you like, refresh of the page, you're just going to send back some data and you leave it within the control of the client to actually process that data. This is probably best served by giving examples rather than actually working through it, but there is some code discussion here. We've got the three buttons here, Ajax 1, Ajax 2, and Ajax 3. Clicking each of the buttons in turn will essentially do Ajax 1. We'll give you this page here, and we've got a test sample Ajax. I can click on it and I'll get a response, okay? But let's just discuss the code first and we'll see what's going on here. Now, we've got a number of jQuery.ajax method parameters. Async is one, right? Now, the default value is true, obviously, because it's Ajax, okay? So we want it to be asynchronous, but it is a Boolean value. We could actually theoretically change this so that it is synchronous rather than asynchronous. You've got a before send header. It's a function to run before the request is sent. You've got cache, which is a Boolean indicator or a Boolean value indicating whether the browser should cache the requested page. The default is true. You've got an event called complete. That complete will have XHR, which is a header, and then a status. So essentially what happens after a function is run, when the request is finished, it's going to have two possible outcomes, success or errors, okay, or failure. So if it's success, this is an ability then to actually say that it is complete, and we've got an event that's triggered on that, which we'll see. You have content type. The default is application. x-www-form-URL encoded. Okay, so that's just the content type that's expected, and you'd be leaving that at default all the time. The context for this, so this specifies kind of like the this value of the Ajax for the callback functions. You have data then, so that specifies the data to be sent to the server. So we can actually send data to the server, and we'll have examples of that now in a wee second. You have data filter, which is a function to handle the raw response data of the HTTP request. We probably won't use that. Data type, the expected data type for the server response, which is normally going to be what we call a JSON, which is a JSON string. We've got error, XHR and status and error. So this is a function to run if the request fails. Okay, so we have a function to run when the request is finished. So after success or whatever, we've got another one to run here, which if it's an error, global Boolean value, if modified, JSON P, which is an override for JSON request. You have the possibility of password, process data. We've got success here. So the highlight ones are the ones that we're probably going to use most. Okay. So if it's successful, we'll get a result, we'll get a status, we'll get the header. And like all of this kind of JavaScript / jQuery stuff, these are all overloads. So we don't necessarily have to run with all three parameters being returned. We can just start with the first one, which is the result. The second one is status, and the third one is the header. If we don't need the header, we don't necessarily have to call it. You've got a type, which specifies the type of request, get or post. So again, the same two methods we can use there. And you have the URL, which specifies the URL that the request is going to be sent to. In essence, in reality for us, that's going to be to a specific PHP file somewhere. You can specify a username that will be used in conjunction with password, and XHR is the HTML request object or the header. Okay, so again, we just see the ones that we're going to use here. Probably best served with examples now. So we'll just use Ajax one. We've got three examples here. And in reality, guys, the three examples here will actually give you enough information to use for use of Ajax for all we're going to do, because it covers everything we really want. So example one is testing Ajax. So all we have to do here is we're going to click this button, simple Ajax button here. Nothing else on the page is going to change other than the reply from Ajax will appear below. So in this, below this line here, we will see the reply from Ajax. The actual code discussion here, this just sends a request to the server with no data passed. If the PHP file ajax1.php, it just echoes success. Okay, so I'm just going to click the button here, and what happens is we get success. The first Ajax worked. Now let's look at the code. So I'm going to look at the code here. And what we have inside here is we've got the, this is the, let me just close all these other files here. Second. Okay, so this is our Ajax one. We've got the index.php. And with index.php, we've got a script here. We've got a function there, including the header. We've got the code discussion. So that's everything that we kind of had looked at there. If we go in here and look at our header, we've got three buttons up there: simple Ajax, simple underscore Ajax1.php, Ajax 2 and Ajax 3. Okay, so they're the three buttons that we're showing there. So we just look at Ajax 1. And Ajax 1, all it does is it sends this result: success is equal to first Ajax worked, and then it echoes result. In the main part here, we've got the simple Ajax 1 page, which is the page that we've just seen displayed here. Okay, I'll just back there and click Ajax 1. So we see this here is simple Ajax 1. That's that page there. If we look at the code for it, So, oh, I never changed the jQuery. They're still using an old jQuery, but that could be changed. So we've got the script, we've got document.ready, right? So this is the main function, and this is the recommendation that all the time we wait until the document is actually fully loaded before we try implementing any jQuery. So this, when the document is fully loaded, this function here will run, okay? And this function here has got a selector called button, and we see down here that we've got a tag here called button. So it's just working off the selector for the tag then button dot click. So when the button is clicked, okay, we're going to have a $.ajax. So this is an Ajax call. And as we noted from the first page, it's got a number of parameters. One of the parameters is the URL. So the URL I'm using is include / ajax1.php, which is in my include folder over here, ajax1.php. Okay. If I look inside of that, we see that it's just got a variable called success and it just echoes it. So what's going to actually happen here is that when this URL is called, it will run through that ajax1.php file, and all ajax1.php is going to do is it's just going to echo back something, okay? The method is going to be post, okay? So if there was any data, which there isn't in this case, it would be sent by post. Success, we've got the function here. So we know from looking at it, the first parameter in success is the result. So we're just calling that result data, okay? And what we're then going to do here is I'm just doing a looking for an ID called output. And we've got an ID down here, a div called output. There's nothing inside of it. So what's going to happen here is for output, we're going to change the HTML to represent the data. So data is going to be just the result of this, which is the echo, blah, 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 is going to be the new HTML for that output. Okay. If it doesn't have success, we have the error here. Okay, so you see the way everything's done here, right? We've got the brace of information here. We've got a URL, and this is actually what we call JSON object notation, where you have the variable name, colon, and then the variable, okay, or the value. So here the variable name is URL, and we've got the value for the actual URL. Here the URL is type. We've got the value for it as post. Here we've got a variable success. It's actually an event, and that's why in NetBeans it's showing up here as black. You see the others here are there as green. We're running a function down on it, which is what you get for, if we look at the parameter list for the Ajax, success was a function. We're playing with data, and we're outputting that data. Same with error here. Okay. Now, so that's what's happening there. So we go back into this, we click on this. Now, what I want to show you here is I'm just going to click the three buttons up here, go to my More Tools, Developer Tools, okay? And now I'm going to look at the network, because troubleshooting this can be important. I'm just going to refresh here. I see I have an error in my console. Okay, so the jQuery wasn't found. Don't worry about that. So we're looking at network here, okay? And what I'm going to click now, we'll see here, I've done a refresh. So we see all the files that have been downloaded, the simple ajax1.php, jQuery's been CSS, the logo, favicon, okay? Now when I click the button, see here, there's another line has been added, which is ajax1.php, okay? When I'm in the network tab here, I can click on that, and it will give me information. So it will give me what the response was, this is the raw response, and it'll give me a preview. It'll also give me the headers, and in the headers here, if I go down to the bottom, if there was any parameter or variable sent, it would be down here at the very bottom. So we'll be looking at that now in a wee second for the second one, because the second one is slightly different. The first one, we weren't passing any data, and we were just echoing something back. Ajax 2 here now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to send a username and password to the server and get a result as a string. So I'm just going to click the button here, and it comes back as username is Peter, password is 12345. Okay. If I look at Ajax 2 here, I can see what the response is. So it's sending back username is :Peter, password is :12345. We're doing a preview. That's what it is like that. I look at the headers here and scroll down to the very bottom. We see that from form data, we've got username Peter, password 12345. So we've actually sent data this time. It's gone to the file over here, and it has processed it and echoed something. So we'll just look in here. We'll look at simple Ajax 2. And this time what we'll see here is that, okay, we've got the URL is ajax2.php, the type is post, but now we've got an extra variable or an extra parameter here, data colon, and we've started again, this is JSON JavaScript object notation format, braces, then we've got value pairs, okay, separated by a comma, another value pair. So we've got here is the value pair name is username in quotes, colon, and then the variable. Then we have a comma here, which indicates there's a second one. So this is an array that's been passed for data, a JSON array, which is password, colon, 12345 is the variable. We have success and error is the same as it was before. So let's just take a look now at the Ajax 2, okay? So this time with Ajax 2, just do a make this a wee bit bigger so we can see it. So this time what we're doing echo, username is colon, and we have $_post username. Because the method used was post, we're able to access the global array of post and extract one of the variables out of it, which is username, okay? And then password is $_post password. So essentially we're just echoing again a string, which is going back and it's being processed by the Ajax tool. Okay, so again, we just look at that from this side here. We test the button, click, we see the string being displayed here. And we can look in our Ajax 2 here under the response we're getting, preview it, and under the headers, we can see what values were sent. Okay, so let's start one. The third type here now, okay, what it's going to do is going to send the username and password to the server and get the result as an array. Okay, so this is going to be slightly different. So we just click on test sample Ajax 3. We're getting a username, Peter, password 12345. It looks exactly the same. We click on Ajax 3 here. We look at our data that's been sent, username Peter, password 12345, exactly the same as before. Now we look at response. Response now is different, okay? Because rather than being a string coming back, we've got this brace, username in quotes, colon, the value of username in quotes, comma, password in quotes, colon, and the value of password in quotes, and then a brace at the end, a closing brace. So that is actually what we call a JSON. It's a JavaScript object notation. So this is a string that's been sent back as a JSON array, or JSON string, sorry. What we can then do in terms of our code, if we look here under preview, we'll see that it's actually trying to display it as it would as it was a native array. In this case, it's JavaScript. It's got password is 12345 and username is Peter. Okay, and what we look at then is if we look at the code here. So we look at Ajax, simple Ajax 3. Okay, and again, just scroll up here. And again, this time everything is exactly the same as it was in terms of sending the data. Okay. But now when we get the data back, we're doing this jQuery.parse JSON data, because what's actually happening, and we need to look at Ajax 3 here. What we've actually done here is we've actually created an associative array, and the associative array username is equal to $_post username. The associative array password is equal to $_post password. And then what we do here is we're echoing a JSON underscore encode of the associative array. Now, remember, this is PHP, it's on the server. So the PHP manages and the syntax, the the method in which we describe an array in PHP is known to PHP. It may not be known to other languages. And this is where JSON has become very, very critical and important. Because what JSON, which is JavaScript Object Notation, allows, it allows different programming languages like PHP, but also like Java, also like C, C++ and C. It allows us to encode a native array into a string, which is a JSON object. So it's formatted and it's in the formula of a JSON string, okay? Then on the client side, or whoever is actually consuming this JSON, in our case, it's going to be a browser, and in our case, then it's also going to be using jQuery or JavaScript. What we want to do is we want to be able to take the JSON string and convert it back into a JavaScript or jQuery array. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're doing JSON underscore encode, which encodes the associative array. And then back here in Ajax 3, we have to do a decode, or we need to parse that JSON array, which is data, which has come back from the function success, into a JavaScript array. So this ASS array is now a JavaScript array, and we can then output in jQuery using JavaScript's syntax. So we're doing output.html, and it's going to be username colon plus ASS array username plus, and then the string password colon, and then plus, oops, got it there at the end, the ASS array password. Okay, and that's what throws it back in there. Okay, so we bring, oops. What we were getting there was the information coming through.